Today, we profile Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill. He was a British statesman, orator, and author who, as Prime Minister, saved Britain and the entire world from defeat against the Nazis. His life was one of extraordinary highs and lows. He rallied England and the entire world in its darkest hour. He was named Time Magazine's Person of the First Half of the 20th Century. He was born in 1874 in Oxfordshire, England. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was a prominent conservative politician, and his mother, Jenny Jerome, was an American socialist. Despite his prestigious lineage, Winston had a turbulent relationship with his parents. His father was distant and demanding, while his mother was often absent due to her social commitments. This left young Winston to navigate the complexities of family life largely on his own, shaping his character as a self-reliant individual. Churchill succeeded as an orator despite being handicapped from childhood with a speech impediment. In 1894, he began his career as a cavalry officer in the British Army. Churchill's early military postings took him to India, Sudan, and South Africa, where he gained valuable experience as a soldier and journalist. His time in South Africa during the Boer War was particularly formative, as he was captured by the Boers and later escaped from captivity, an event that bolstered his fame. Churchill's political career began in 1900 when he was elected as a member of Parliament for Oldham, a working-class constituency. Initially a member of the Conservative Party, Churchill's political views evolved over time. He became increasingly disillusioned with the party's stance on free trade and the issues of social justice. In 1904, he famously switched parties, joining the Liberals, a decision that would shape much of his early political career. As a Liberal, Churchill quickly rose through the ranks. In 1905, he became Under-Secretary of State for the Colonies, and by 1908, he was appointed President of the Board of Trade. He introduced significant reforms in labor rights and social welfare during his time in office. Churchill's political influence continued to grow, and in 1911 he became the First Lord of Admiralty, where he oversaw the modernization of the British Navy. His reforms at the Admiralty, however, were controversial, and the Gardens Campaign of 1915, which he championed during World War I, proved disastrous. The failed campaign led to his resignation from the Admiralty in a period of political exile. His reputation suffered in the years following, as he was perceived by many as a political failure. Churchill developed his distinctive views on international politics. His opposition to the policy of appeasement, which sought to placate Nazi Germany in the 1930s, would later define his legacy. Churchill was a vocal critic of Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's approach to Hitler and advocated for a stronger stance against the rising threat of fascism. Churchill's defining moment came in 1940 when he became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during the early stages of World War II. His leadership during this tumultuous period is regarded as one of the finest in history. At a time when Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany, Churchill's speeches and radio broadcasts inspired resilience and determination in the British people. His most famous words, delivered during the Battle of Britain, still resonate today.
Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.
Churchill's leadership was pivotal during the Battle of Britain, a critical moment in the war. He strengthened alliances, particularly with the United States, and played a central role in securing vital support from President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Churchill's resolve also shaped the strategy that ultimately led to the Allied victory in Europe. The Tehran Conference in late 1943 was a strategy meeting between Joseph Stalin, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Winston Churchill to coordinate military strategy against Germany and Japan. Although the leaders arrived with differing objectives, the main outcome of the Tehran Conference was the Western Allies' commitment to open a second front against Nazi Germany, including the famous invasion on France. While his leadership was indispensable, it was not without controversy. Churchill's war strategies, including the bombing campaigns against German cities, sparked debate and criticism. Nevertheless, his wartime leadership earned him a revered place in history. After the war, he was again ousted from power as the British electorate voted in a Labour government. However, Churchill remained an influential figure and continued to play a significant role in global politics, particularly in the formation of NATO and the shaping of post-war Europe. Churchill's later years were marked by continued political activity, writing, and a growing admiration from both the British public and the world. In 1951, he became Prime Minister for the second time, a period that saw his role in the Cold War and his attempts to preserve the unity of the Western Alliance against the Soviet threat. During his post-war years, Churchill was a prolific writer. His historic works included the Second World War and a history of English-speaking peoples, earned him the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953. Churchill's personal life was marked by his long marriage to Clementine Hosier, whom he wed in 1908. Their relationship was a source of stability and support for Churchill throughout his tumultuous career. The couple had 5 children, and Clementine's influence on Winston's personal and political decisions was profound. He passed away on January 24, 1965, at age 90. Here are some quotes from Winston Churchill. "Success is never final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. To each, there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered a chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fit for their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. If you're going through hell, keep going. You have enemies? Good. That means you stood up for something sometime in your life. A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. Kites rise highest against the wind, not with it. In war, you can only be killed once, but in politics, many times. Here are 3 great Churchill stories. The shortest speech ever given and the best commencement speech ever given was on October 29th, 1941, by Winston Churchill. He got up. He started, "Never give up." And there was a thunderous roar for a minute. Then he said, "Never give up." And there was another thunderous roar for 2 or 3 minutes. For a third time, he said, "Never never give up. He then sat down. That was the greatest, shortest speech ever given. Story number 2. Joseph Karsh was the master photographer of the 20th century. I quote him, "My portrait of Winston Churchill changed my life. I knew after I had taken it that it was an important picture, but I could hardly have dreamed that it would become one of the most widely reproduced images in the history of photography." In 1941, Churchill visited Washington. The Prime Minister, Mackenzie King, invited me to be present. After the electrifying speech, I waited in the speaker's chamber where the evening before I had set up my lights and camera. The Prime Minister, arm in arm with Churchill and followed by his entourage, started to lead him into the room. I switched on my floodlights. A surprised Churchill growled, "What's this? What's this?" No one had the courage to explain. I stepped forward and said, "Sir, I hope I will be fortunate enough to make a portrait worthy of this historic occasion." He glanced at me and demanded, "Why was I not told?" When his entourage began to laugh, this hardly helped matters for me. Churchill lit a fresh cigar, puffed at it with a mischievous air, and then magnanimously relented. "You may take one." Churchill's cigar was ever present. I held out an ashtray, but he would not dispose of it. I went back to my camera and made sure that everything was all right technically. I waited. He continued to chomp vigorously at his cigar. I waited. Then I stepped toward him and without premeditation, but ever so respectfully, I said, "Forgive me, sir," and plucked the cigar out of his mouth. By the time I got back to my camera, he looked so belligerent he could have devoured me. It was at that instant that I took the photograph. The rest is history. A third story. He loved to drink and smoke his cigars, and he would go to a lot of parties. And there was a famous socialite lady, Lady Astor, a snooty lady, and they hated each other, and they would barb together. And one time he had a drink in his hand, and Lady Astor came up and said, "Winston, if I was married to you, I would poison that drink." Churchill snaps back, "Lady Astor, if I was married to you, I would drink that drink." Here's the letter he wrote on April 11th, 1955. Chartwell Speaker of the House of Commons. Dear Mr. Speaker, it has given me particular pleasure to receive your letter of April 7th and read the most kind tributes paid to me in the House of Commons of Canada. Pray accept my thanks for your most kind thoughts of me and for your good wishes. Yours sincerely, Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was arguably the most influential person in the first half of the 20th century. That's the story of Winston Churchill. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these messages of inspiration and hope, please like, subscribe, and/or share them with family and friends. Until we meet again, please remember, with God, anything is possible. Spoho.
We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.